This concept that, wait a minute. This concept that Mr. Fenn is a trickster is, of course, not something I figured out. People have been commenting. Everything's been talked about by people before I ever even got here. I mean, I've been doing this a little over a year now. And other people have been doing it for years and years. Multiple trips. I've done 4. And one of them, I was so stupid I ended up snowbound in Vernal, Utah for a week because of the snow. And it was cool. But, because Vernal's a cool town if you ever want to go there. It's a great place to go meet the Western heritage. One of the few towns in Utah not founded by the Mormons. It's very interesting. Very Western town. A lot of Indian stuff in the town. Here's the thing, though. Forrest Fenn is the trickster. Forrest Fenn, as I said earlier, likes to manipulate language, misspeak, misspell, do all sorts of things to get your attention, to guide you, to make you think of other things. He's a word smith. He's also a word manipulator. He thinks words are malleable, which of course they are. Do you know why the English language is so popular? Do you know why the English language is a world language? The English language is a world language now. English is now the most spoken second language in the world. Chinese, I believe, is the most spoken language in the world. But English is the most universally spoken language, a language that we can all understand if we all have to use it. And, you know, India, the country of India, has so many different dialects in it. I forget how many, but a lot of different dialects. That when they were colonized and they were forced to learn English, that actually made them become a much more powerful country as time went by, because the people would go from one region of India to a different region of India. They couldn't speak to each other. They had a different language. And that's a very natural thing that happens with the humans. I'll tell you something really horrible that's happening as I get older, is I'm starting to think of myself as separate from the human race. And I'm starting to mentally talk about the humans. Oh God, the humans. Well, I don't know. That's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. If I start referring to myself as a third person and humans as third person to myself, that's going to be not, or second. I don't know. It's not going to be a good thing. Probably socially. Someone invites me to go somewhere and I go, yeah, so we got to go out with the humans? Not good. Not good, Eric. Tober's like, I understand what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, to get back to my point. English is, what happened was when in the 20th century, India had this second, everyone knew English because of the colonization of India. So what happened was people would get together from different parts of India to do business. Well, they'd never been able to do business before because one person would come from one part of India and another person would come from another part of India, and they couldn't communicate with each other. Their languages were that different. All of a sudden they had they had English as a backup language, and all of a sudden they're communicating. So India then was very much able to progress much easier because everyone started using English, I guess you could say, as, well, I won't say a business language, but as a language so that they all could communicate. I think it's just fascinating. English is a mongrel language. English started out basically being a northern Celtic, Nordic, Germanic language, English of course, Celt, Welsh, but then into it French and all these other languages, Chinese, words like ketchup are Chinese, and you had all these words from around the world. The different nationalities have lent themselves to the English language. I watched a documentary on it. So it's a mongrel language that everyone should kind of feel included in and not say, oh, that's just the Nordic language that we all learn. And you're really learning a language that may have started in the Germanic countries. Keeping in mind the Vikings, they say, were basically Germans who went north and never came home after the summer, which I thought was an interesting way of putting it. and then evolved in the north. Anyway, I'm getting way off topic. The point I want to make is Fenn loves the language, and he loves playing with the language, and he loves misleading us with the language, etc. Now, getting to the point of being the trickster. I'll just get one off early. See if I can find it. Does everyone remember when Fenn... Are you kidding me? Oh, different book. Fenn says to us one time, he's talking about being out in, I think it was when he got lost with Donnie in the mountains, and he talked about, he says, I won't name the word, but eventually we realize he ate, if you put it together, you realize he ate a porcupine. And I was reading another book, totally off the subject, and someone was talking about eating porcupine, of all things. I'm immediately going, holy moly, this reminds me of Forrest Fenn. The guy said it was great. He said when they roasted it, it tastes like pork rind, which I've never been a big eater of pork rind, but I thought that was just kind of like, there you go again. Forrest Fenn, I think he was talking about porcupine. I could be wrong about that, but he said it tasted like kerosene because it's basically he said the porcupine eats pine needles. I think that's what he said. Remember gin? Isn't gin distilled from pine needles or pine nuts? Ooh, you know, I don't drink anymore, but that was a nasty-ass liquor. Woo! That was a weird taste. If that's what porcupine really does taste like, because now I'm not sure who's right. The trickster. I can see the meat tasting pretty weird. All right, so anyway, that's just one example of Forrest Fenn, the trickster, the whatever, where he says one thing and then you read about somewhere else and you go, that's not right. Of course, I went over it with the Coriolis effect that he talked about, the Coriolis force, how it's a thing in the north and the south, and it makes the water go one way, and in the north the water goes another way. And he said that's why we drive on both different sides of the street in England. In America, of course, he's totally forgetting that we're still in the northern hemisphere, and it turned out that had nothing to do with it had nothing to do with the Coriolis effect. It had to do with the fact that the United States of America decided to go again the English custom of driving on the left-hand side of the street. So they said, we're going to drive on the right side of the street. That's all. All right. These are quotes that I got. These are actually quotes that I got. Tober's on my leg and it's going to sleep. Oh, sorry, buddy, but that was very uncomfortable. And this is uncomfortable too. All right. I actually compiled this like last week when I was thinking of doing this, and then other things got in the way, and I don't even know why I have these quotes. No one knows where that treasure chest is but me, Fenn says. If I die tomorrow, the knowledge of that location goes in the coffin with me. Well, duh. Someone says, they're talking about the map in the book. Someone says, north of Cody, there is a dot with no name on it. Someone else says, looks like they just forgot to put a label on Ralston. Someone says, exactly, and a Ralston is a cocktail. I'll get this. A Ralston is a cocktail with peach schnapps and pink lemonade, and Forrest has said that when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. What's in lemonade besides lemon and sugar? Water. Boom. Where warm water's halt. Whew. That's a far way to go to get a simple... Wouldn't it be easier to just find a hot spring or something? I don't know. That's pretty wild. That is wild. Now here's one that someone actually, oh God, I think his name is Mark. Mark, if you're watching, you'll recognize, you know who you are. He said, did you ever notice that thing about Clark Gable was obviously wrong? Mark's point was that nobody, here's what Fenn said, about 1990 or so I learned that my daughters, now ages 56 and 57, I wrote in 30 at the time. Because Mark was saying he said when they were in their 50s they would know. But actually he was saying at the time he wrote the book, he said it would have been 20 years earlier. They were in their 30s. He said they didn't know who Clark Gable was. I was shocked when I decided to record my family history, do the memoir. I wanted them to know as much as I could remember about my life and the events and what shaped me in that. But this Mark said, well, do you believe that women, he thought in their 50s, but even as I figured out, they would have been in their 30s, didn't know who Clark Gable is? Is there a young girl alive who does not at some point get turned on to and watch Gone with the Wind with Clark Gable and Vivien Leigh? I don't think so. I mean, that's an incredible movie any way you cut it, but it's a very, very romantic movie, and I just don't think... I think this Mark was right. I think women in their 30s in 1990 had heard of Gone with the Wind or saw it and knew who Clark Gable was. You think about it, right? I mean, it's not feasible that Forrest Fenn's daughters, unless he brought them up in some sort of cocoon, didn't know who Clark Gable was by the time they're in their 30s. Why does he do these things? He said he does things like that to draw your attention to it. Maybe to make a simple way of like making us read something twice, 3 times. Because you go, wait a minute, that didn't make sense. And you go back and you read it over again. Does that always work? I don't know. As I said in one video, that kind of mind think, if Forrest Fenn has complained about, it's going to be a long series, I can tell. Forrest Fenn has complained about, he has misspoken about things and then been upset or at least irritated that no one called him on it. That he has put things in books that were wrong and then been surprised that nobody, when they reviewed the book or told him they had read the book, mentioned his mistakes. It bothers him. Oh, I see. This has some relevance. It's when he said, I would smell wonderful smells if I was at the treasure chest of pine needles or piñon nuts and sagebrush. And then at the end he says, well, you've asked me a lot of questions, but I got to tell you, there's one thing I told you I wish I had not. A lot of people thought that was the piñon nut comment because the piñon nuts grow primarily in New Mexico, a tiny bit in Colorado. I think... well, no, not a tiny bit. They grow in Colorado. I've been among pinyon trees when I was doing Vermilion Creek. A very tiny amount at the very southern border of Wyoming and none in Montana. So I think people made it very clear very quickly that if you figured out the range of the pinyon nut, you're going to cut out a lot of the area that you have to search. So he immediately, I think that got back to him. He said, boy, I wish I hadn't said that. Is it true or not? I don't know. This is DaleNeitzel.com. Forrest said soon after the book was published that there was an unintended clue in it. He also said that there was an error in it. However, searchers caught several more typos. I think we were up to about 6 of those. Someone said, I don't think he considers the MD an error. But that's an opinion, not a fact. The MD. The unintended clue was because the map eliminated Canada. Okay, Forrest did not intend to do that and just didn't notice the map stopped at the border. I think his map was kind of not very... I mean, they've got a dot on it that someone says should be Ralston, I guess Wyoming, but they didn't put the name on it. And then he didn't put Canada on there, and apparently maybe he wanted to. Here's another quote. The Trickster. That's the concept, right? That this is Fenn screwing up on purpose, not screwing up on purpose, but screwing up. And he himself has said, if you make it a policy to mislead people by misspeaking and writing things wrong, etc., it helps you out if you actually screw up, because then you say, well, it's just what I do. I screw up. So it's kind of funny, haha, but also it's true, right? In Treasure of the Chase, Forrest mistakes For Whom the Bell Tolls with a Farewell to Arms. When looking into A Farewell to Arms, it appears that Hemingway wrote at least part of the book in the Wyoming Bighorns. Others had suggested the first letter of each word for whom the bell tolls is an anagram for the final letter. First letter of each word of but too far to walk. Could each clue line up with a story in the story have a riddle that needs to be solved to give you a location that the clue in the poem refers to? Question mark? Jesus Christ, I don't know. Thank you, Tober. Just got my space back. I can tell you from my solve, not the solve. My solve, oops,